best in radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. Kerry, Lutz here. I couldn't let this one go by. Our friend Martin Armstrong got a piece, appeared on the front page of ZeroHedge.com, also on his blog, What Happens When Government Collapses? And it's in response to a question posed to him. Let me read it to you. Try not to bore you. I hate reading stuff verbatim. It just is a bummer usually, but here goes. Mr. Armstrong, thank you for freely educating all who choose to listen to facts and not opinion. You've helped me grow greatly as a person since I stumbled upon your writings 5 years ago. I think that's probably not quite accurate. I think Martin was in jail then, but last couple of years. But then again, I think they were smuggling his writings out of prison. I mean, it's like something from communist China or Russia, smuggling the guy's writings out, like Solzhenitsyn, the Gulag Archipelago. I am nothing special, just your average American. I grind through life as a teacher, small business owner, husband, and father in Pennsylvania. The future outlook of our world heavily weighs on my mind as I think about my young children and the hundreds of students I teach. My question for you is, what is the average American person to do? If you were to have limited, if I was writing this, I'd put in there sick, as in error. If you were to have limited funds and resources, what steps would you take to ensure a better or at least more secure life for your family? Sincerely, J.R. So, Martin is a promoter, ever the promoter. Answer: come December, I will be able to explain a bit more clearly. It will become obvious by then why I have held back a touch more in this area. I am finishing The Solution and intend to put this out in a book format so many people can afford it. I too have family, and this is why I even do what I do. Yes, I could just retire and ignore the world. And honestly, Martin doesn't owe the world anything, especially our government, what it did to him. But you know what? We have to be grateful to Martin. He is the least bitter, most magnanimous spirit that I've encountered in this world. I mean, what they did to him, locking him away for 11 years on a contempt of court BS rap, inducing him to plead on the hope that he would get out one day soon, and then using that to keep him in jail for a longer period of time. It's just a miscarriage of justice. But in any event, as he says here, we can make a difference. Step 1 is understanding what is the problem. At least then we can address a solution with some reasonable game plan. And, this is what it's really all about. You can't dwell in the level of the problem. Once you know what the problem is, you deal with solutions. And in this article, he's got a picture of a much younger Mel Gibson in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Well, maybe it was the first Mad Max of the epic. I think it was a trio. And he's holding a sawed-off shotgun. Not the ideal personal defense weapon, although a sawed-off shotgun can be ideal for closed-in situations. Leave that up to you. There's people that know a lot more about this stuff than I do. Look, if you're in a state and you can be armed all or most of the time and you feel better being that way, highly recommend it. And if you feel that your state's getting more dangerous and you don't want to be there anymore because they don't let you arm yourself, then get the hell out. Come to a state like Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, Alaska. If you can stand the ice, do that. So here's what he says. We have a great convergence coming. It is nothing to be afraid of, and it is nothing we can ignore. And I would tell you it's nothing that we can do anything about. yes, a Mad Max event is possible. The average person depends upon government tremendously, even those not on welfare. Well, our roads, police, fire, think about it, garbage, all this stuff. And government has become a substitute for what we used to rely upon in community and neighbors and all that. And he gives examples. There are pensions and Social Security that people really believe they are entitled to, and thus these benefits will exist. What happens when they realize they do not? As I always say, what happens when the checks stop flowing? What happens when the EBT cards shut down? That is a reason for having implements of self-defense and a reason to think about it. So he goes into a real interesting analysis here of what socialism has done, how it's changed humanity. So he says it's changed the historic bounds of family. He said you had 4 to 6 kids for what was your retirement. The kids knew they had the responsibility of taking care of your parents. Today, government's job, and really the job of government is to pay for some hellhole called a nursing home or an assisted living facility where you get stuck. And this is an area where I agree with Aaron Clary. It's like, hey, give me the Smith & Wesson retirement plan. 35 cents, I'm not going to a nursing home. Or I'll take a lethal injection, or hook me up to a cylinder of nitrous oxide, let me asphyxiate, but I'm not going to a nursing home. I don't want to get old timers and have some guy changing my diapers because I can't do it for myself. And I would hope that my kids would have the good common sense to do it for me. Not what I want to be doing. So, as he says, everything has been changed to depend upon the government that never tells the truth, and they never will, and they will defend to the very last drop of your blood. Now, Martin, I love you. Really do. You're my best guest out there. Get the most listens when you're on. Have somebody edit your writing before you post it on the blog. I know it's a blog, but you need your work edited, okay? I'll do it for you if you want, but somebody's got to edit this stuff. So here's where he gets into real interesting historical perspective. And that's what I love about Martin is he goes back in time and ties it all together. So marriages were arranged, okay? And they worked out much better than today where you had free choice. So free choice, like in the Arab and Middle East nations to pick their own government, democracy doesn't work too well. Free choice, picking your own spouse, I can tell you from personal experience, hasn't always worked out too well for me. Age difference, typically 25% during the 19th century, okay? So that was the 1800s, meaning the guy was 25% older than the woman. And then he says that Hollywood, to sell movies, turned lust into love at first sight. They painted the image of happily ever after, and he said he spoke with filmmakers, and they all said people do not want to leave a movie feeling depressed. They glorified marriage and set unrealistic standards. Consequently, the age difference collapsed, and the divorce rate rose to 60% because of unrealistic expectations. Places where the age difference has not collapsed is Latin America, interestingly enough, and other developing parts of the world. But the age difference is starting to collapse now, and their marriage divorce rates are climbing. So here's another interesting fact. Pensions began as the marriage contract. The man first had to establish himself and then propose. Okay. So the dowry was all about ensuing the wife would be secure the pension. So for those of you who aren't aware of it, like women were not real desirable at that point. So the family of the woman, to induce the guy to take the woman off their hands and to take care of her, would give him a bunch of gold. They still do this in India, or farm animals or land, just here, what do you want to take my daughter off my hands? I want to get rid of her. There's nothing less desirable than having a daughter who, goes into spinsterhood. And I know a lot of you women are not going to be happy with me saying it, but this is what history was like. And arguably, things might have been better. So, as he said, it was not about love at first sight. And he says, yet according to things like Match.com, and I'm going to refrain from saying anything about that awful website. 70% of people dating expect love at first sight. So many people have the wrong expectation of marriage and are thus doomed from the start. And here he's saying the black family was stronger than the white family before welfare. When you paid, when it's got his tenses a little bit wrong here, when you pay women not to be married and to have children, you change the family structure. No kidding. So back then, 85% of black children were born to a two-parent family. Now, 85% of them are born out of wedlock. Interesting. And the stigma of being born out of wedlock in the 60s. I remember when a girl would get pregnant in high school, she'd have to drop out and go to some home for unwed mothers. So he's saying here, socialism has significantly altered the behavior of every race, all based upon the expectations of government. And I would say more so incentives of government. So moving on, as he says, free food changes behavior, whether it's of people or animals. And being compassionate is to be human. Like I say, Martin, get a damn editor. You got the money. Please get an editor. To give a man free fish, you feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Government adopted the first strategy to create dependency upon the political system. And he gives an example. When you go to Yellowstone National Park, they tell you not to feed the bears because the bears will then look for free food and they'll become dependent and no longer hunt. And humans are no different. What happens when government collapses and people are totally unprepared because they never thought government would collapse? Good question. And, what I would say here is I don't think we're going totally Mad Max. I think that large segments of government will collapse, but other parts of government won't collapse. I say that these portions of government will be shed, and that's what it's going to be a good thing. So, hey, Martin knows a lot more than I do about a lot of things. I suggest you go to his site, armstrongeconomics.com. Look at his blog. He's talking about Ebola and the way that government's lying to us about that as well. Good article that he grabbed from someplace about personal robots going on sale next year in the US of A. He's been spot on about the US dollar. We know that for sure. Interestingly, what he's been talking about with the dollar. So talking about the dollar, he's been spot on. He says it's amazing how people keep touting the demise of the dollar, yet cannot comprehend that it remains the only game in town. And so a good analogy today in ZeroHedge, I always say, it's not my own original thinking, believe me. Best looking horse in the glue factory. This one said it's the cleanest shirt in the laundry. And he's saying we may yet see a tremendous capital flight to the dollar for a host of reasons, from war and political risk to the landscape of interest rate trends. He said an Asian capital flight to the dollar may really set in motion the most dramatic swings in the world economy starting very soon. And said the central banks are fearful of a massive exodus of capital and a flood into the dollar when U.S. interest rates begin to rise. I've kind of been skeptical that they're going to rise. Like I've seen for years them just going nowhere. Zero interest rates. He says central banks in Asia are especially fearful of a rise in U.S. interest rates from a capital flow perspective, and they're hoping to defend against a flight to the dollar by keeping their own interest rates high. And that would explain why rates like in Australia have been higher and elsewhere. He says when a rise happens in U.S. rates, it'll force Asia to stem the tide by raising their own rates. And this will just be the worst of all possible worlds. And he says you see that borrowing costs in Asia are going up. For the past 2 years now, real risk-free interest rate in the region has been at about 5%, which is triple the long-term average. It says an uptick in rates in the U.S. is going to be huge shock in Asia and could send cash pouring into the USA even without saber rattling. So in 2013, total amount of investment in Asia, excluding Japan, was $6 trillion. And the impact of an Asian investment downturn is tremendously ominous. 2016 to 2020, and it's falling all over the place. The only two countries in Asia seeing any kind of growth are South Korea and India. So, it's going to be interesting to see because, the dollar, its rise has really been counterintuitive to so many of us. So he's got a report coming out on world currencies. Make sure you check that out. What else can we tell you? Yeah, just so much going on. It just reminds me of Fire Sign Theater, a record when they had records, cassette, whatever, called Everything You Know Is Wrong. And basically, it's correct. Everything you think you know is definitely wrong. You make assumptions and you assume that your assumptions are correct. And what I've come to realize is that most of my assumptions invariably are incorrect, and they always wind up costing me money and other damage to my life. So, when they say don't make assumptions, it's so true. And, especially when it comes to investing, one thing I wanted to cover, there's a case coming up in federal court by Hank Greenberg. And this was reported on in the New York Sun the other day, October 9th, by Seth Lipsky. And Hank Greenberg's basically suing the federal government and the Federal Reserve for pretty much stealing his shares in AIG without any compensation. And, all the brilliant commentators have been saying that, it's a BS case. It's not worth anything. And, he's just going to lose it. But there's a thing in the Fifth Amendment called the Takings Clause. And I happen to know a little bit about this because in constitutional law, I did my, I don't want to call it thesis, but I did a dissertation on it. And Takings Clause says no property shall be taken without just compensation. and no property shall be taken for public use without just compensation. And this has been eroded greatly by the courts. Public purpose now is building a Target or a mall, or, so many things are considered public purpose, slum eradication, you name it. It used to be a highway, an army base, things like that were really public purposes. Now, a casino can be a public purpose. Depends on the state. So basically, AIG goes down the tubes. The Federal Reserve seizes all the shares in it, and then they use it as a mechanism for a backdoor bailout of Wall Street during the financial collapse. And Hank Greenberg, who's got a real checkered past, Maurice Hank Greenberg, files a suit against the U.S. and the Federal Reserve for taking his shares, which are now worth some money. I mean, they're now worth $50 a share. Back then they were probably worth 15 cents a share, or maybe they had next to no worth. But the fact is, they're probably worth something now because they were bailed out by the federal government. So, the one thing the government doesn't want is any scrutiny of what took place during the crash, because they basically did whatever the hell they wanted to do. You didn't like it? Too bad. And, this guy is like a fly in the ointment. They'd be, he thinks he should get $40 billion. If they can make him go away for a couple billion, they just might be well advised to do it. So, hey, don't forget, you're thinking about gold, silver. I think now's a good freaking time to buy it. And I think I'm going to go call up Tom Cloud, order some silver on Monday. I'm going to do it. His number is 800-247-2812. He's been in the business 38 years. How many people do you know who've been selling the same thing for 38 years? Still doing the same thing. He could retire, but he's doing it. He also sells investment grade diamonds. Colored diamonds are the place to be. Past 3-4 years, when precious metals were getting manipulated and slammed, well, colored diamonds have just been taken off. Cartel hasn't seen fit to slam them. And if you're looking to transport your wealth to other parts of the world, well, diamonds are the way to do it, boy. Just ask those people who managed to get their wealth out of Nazi Germany during World War II. They were able to do it by getting their diamonds put in their teeth. Not so extreme now, but Tom's an expert in diamonds. He's selling them cheaper than you can get them on 47th Street in New York City, cheaper than Amsterdam in their diamond district, cheaper than in Tel Aviv. His markup's 8%. They're GIA certified, so you have no risk for quality. He guarantees everything he sells, free shipping, free insurance. Tom is the man. I mean, I've been looking for somebody like Tom. I was looking for a really good quality diamond guy to get you guys into, and I came across Tom, and he also happens to sell bullion. So check him out, 800-247-2812. Also, find him on the web, cloudhardassets.com. But as always, especially for diamonds, you have to talk to people on the phone. And like I say, everything he does, he guarantees. That's why there's no complaints with the Better Business Bureau, 38 years. I mean, that's pretty amazing. So we have no problem recommending Tom, and let us know how you like him. And by the way, emails, KHL at KHL@kerrylutz.com. And go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Working on a great one right now on gold and silver, things you need to think about. And you got all the links there for Twitter feed, for Facebook, for YouTube, iTunes. Don't forget, click that link iTunes. You can subscribe so you never have to worry about missing an episode again. And hit me up with any questions. Going to have a couple webinars coming up the end of the month. This is Kerry Lutz. Been another Triple Lutz Report, signing off.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Every week the show is growing. Would you like to be a part of it? Then go to clubfsn.com and help support us with $1, $2, $5, or $10 a month and get a host of premium content with newsletters dropped into your mailbox, free books, private audio clips, webinars, and much more. Then join clubfsn.com. If you want to get ahead of the trend and ensure your family's financial security before it's too late, go to clubfsn.com and sign up.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.